Hello, Booktube. This is Aaron from Aaron Read a Book or Aaron Read a Book. I thought I'd do a little Friday reads. I finished two books this week, and they're both sort of leftovers from Victober, which I think this was my favourite Victober ever because I read only Victorian books the whole month. I didn't I didn't stray once. So and normally book events, I get a bit tired of the theme after a few books, but this one I was just in the mood for Victorian books the whole month, and I think that shows that there's a great range to Victorian books. The first thing I finished was the group read along, which was Anthony Trollope's The Way We Live Now. I will say this is not my favourite Trollope book, but I did love it. It was a 5-star book for me. And the reason I would say it's not my favourite Trollope is because I love like some of the characters that Trollope does in his other books that you're rooting for more than any character that I liked in this book, because this book is full of quite cynical characters. So the whole book is very cynical. It's obviously Trollope. Apparently he had come back from travelling or being out of England for a long time, and he didn't like the state of the world that he found, or the state of England as he found it. And I think that there were some financial things going on at the time that were sort of scams and things. But basically, that the central part of this novel is Augustus Melmotte, who is a Donald Trump-like figure, who is scamming everyone, basically saying he's a lot richer than he is, and he's not paying bills, and he's doing things with debt and running for parliament and things, all the things that crooks do these days. And people are disgusted by him, but also drawn to his money. So everyone in the book is drawn into this web. So you can't, apart from Roger. Roger is probably the only moral character. Maybe Heta as well. In this, so you can back them a little bit, but generally everyone's been corrupted by Melmotte. So yeah, I mean the way the novel's put together and weaved in, everything's weaved together, and all these characters and these storylines that I was interested in made it a brilliant novel. The end was a bit hard to. I can see Trollope sort of wrote himself into a point where he couldn't end this very satisfactorily. He basically had to tie up every knot, because he had gotten 100 chapters in, and you can see him sort of rushing the end a bit. So that was a bit disappointing, but generally I loved it, and it was a 5-star. So, and it was really fun reading along with everyone and talking about it in the Discord as well. I did read the last 10 chapters in one sitting because I couldn't wait. But apart from that, I was doing the 2 or 3 chapters a day or whatever it was, 3 or 4 I think it was. And generally I am really bad at reading more than one book at once, so it was good that I kept disciplined and I was reading a different book at night from this in the day. But yeah, another great Trollope. I've never read a bad Trollope though. Love the man. The other thing I read, or the last thing I read for Victober, and I finished this last night, was Dracula, which I'd never read before, and I didn't enjoy it as much as other people seem to. For Bookstalgic, she read it and enjoyed it and reviewed it like a day or two ago, and she really loved it. But she did point out a lot of the things that I had some issues with, and things that I really liked as well. So obviously the characters in Dracula are iconic. So it's hard to even separate the characters from what they have become in public sort of culture. So you know who Dracula is, you know what he's like. He's a very naughty boy. He I really liked Renfield, actually. I didn't know much about Renfield. I knew there was a movie about him with Nicolas Cage recently, but I haven't seen his character in much other things, and he just amused me in his little in his sort of sanatorium, eating the flies and then eating the spiders, and then trying to get a cat that's just making his way up the food chain. Um, yeah, so the character's brilliant. The beginning of the novel is brilliant as well, where Harker goes to Dracula's castle, and that's really thrilling. I found the middle and most of most of the second half really quite dull, and quite repetitive as well. And I found some of the things that the characters were doing very stupid. Mild spoilers for Dracula here if you haven't read it. One thing I found bizarre was they'd already had Lucy fall prey to Dracula, and then they decide, um, I forget the character's name, but the wife, they decide, first of all they decide that she shouldn't be involved, but then they put her in a house that has a mental institution on one side and a known vampire's house on the other side. So I don't really know why they would do that, but yeah, there was some sort of silly things, and I just thought that the bits with Lucy and her were a bit repetitive at times, and the end was a bit slow getting to the end, and then slightly fizzled out a bit. But the only other way to have done it would be a massive showdown. But I did love that it was all broken up into different stories, so that was really fun. But yeah, I was a little disappointed, but it was also interesting because I'd read Carmilla uh, earlier in the month, so I had these two vampire stories right next to each other, and I think Carmilla is like 100 pages long and quite focused, so I like that about it. But I think the characters in Dracula are more interesting, and if Bram Stoker would have maybe lost 100 pages, I think it could have been more to my taste. So I won't say better, but it's that weird thing with such iconic stories. It's hard to separate it in your brain, but and you feel bad not liking it or being bored during it. But yeah, I did still like it overall. It was fun. Now, what I'm reading now, I've only just started a book. I'm a couple of pages in, and I held up a big pile of November possibilities in my last video, and then I watched a video on BookTube from Alice's Giant Bookshelf, and she mentioned she mentioned a book about books, and I instantly ordered it on eBay, and I've started that already, and that's called Dear Reader, The Comfort and Joy in Books. So I've only read the first couple of pages, but it seems to be a sort of personal memoir of this author's relationship with books, and she's just moved back to Cornwall where she spent some of her childhood, and she's sort of rereading some of her, and she's arranging her bookshelf. She's rereading some books she loves from in chronological order. So she's starting with Narnia, so that's already ticking boxes in my head because that was Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe was one of my childhood books as well. And she also slagged off Charles Dickens a bit, which I also relate to. But well, she called him boring, and I like the cover. And I've been known to offend the Charles Dickens fans on BookTube, so I feel like we're going to get along. So this is really fun. I've also picked back up Empire of Pain, which I stopped reading a couple of months ago, halfway through, because I was watching 2 TV shows about the opioid crisis, so I didn't really want to read about it as well. So, but yeah, I've picked this back up and started back on it again now. And my head's not all full of Dope Sick and that other TV series. I saw that there's a book of Dope Sick as well, and I saw someone else reading that, and that sounds a bit more interesting than this to me, because it focuses more on people who are affected by it. But I'll plug on. I really love Patrick Radden-Keefe, so it is good. I just know everything about it already from TV. Yeah, so that's my Friday reads. Let me know your thoughts on Dracula Booktube. Am I the only one who got a bit bored in the middle? I've seen other reviews on Goodreads and stuff say that. And did you enjoy The Way We Live Now? And if you've read Dear Reader, let me know. Have a lovely one, Booktube.